The crystalline spires of the Galactic Institute of Unified Species pierced the nebula-stained sky of Kepler 442b, their surfaces shimmering with the ambient energy of a dozen different atmospheric processors. Inside Lecture Hall Gamma 7, Professor Zethkari's four arms gestured gracefully as holographic star maps danced above the assembled students, each one representing a different chapter in the bloody history of interstellar warfare. The Proxima conflicts of 2387 demonstrate why unity remains our highest aspiration. The Zilithian professor intoned, her melodic voice carrying the weight of centuries. Her audience was a tapestry of evolution's creativity. The crystalline Vorthok with their prismatic skin, the ethereal Luminar who flickered between dimensions, the proud Drakmari with their scaled hides and predatory grace, and scattered among them the humans. Alec Chun sat in the third row, his unremarkable brown eyes taking in everything while his classmates focused solely on the professor. Unlike the Vorthok student beside him who processed information through bioelectric pulses, or the winged Arion behind him who absorbed knowledge through harmonic frequencies, Alec relied on something far more primitive: observation. He noticed the barely perceptible tremor in the floor's metal plating, the way the atmospheric recyclers had shifted their hum by half a frequency, the faint metallic tong creeping into the air that spoke of compromised containment seals. Humans, whispered Cyril, a luminar whose translucent form shimmered with disdain. Always so paranoid, always scanning for threats that don't exist. Her companion, a proud Drakmari named Vexstar, flicked his forked tongue dismissively. Their homeworld must be truly savage to breed such constant vigilance. No wonder they were the last to achieve spaceflight. Alec didn't respond to their mockery. He'd heard it all before. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Confederation, barely 3 decades since first contact. To species who had mastered interstellar travel for millennia, humanity was an afterthought, a curiosity. At best, they had no natural armor like the Drakmari, no psychic abilities like the Luminar, no technological symbiosis like the Vorthok. They were soft, short-lived, and seemingly unremarkable. What his classmates didn't understand was that Earth hadn't just been humanity's cradle. It had been their crucible. While other species had evolved on worlds where intelligence meant cooperation and technology solved survival, humans had clawed their way up a food chain filled with apex predators, natural disasters, and resource scarcity. Every human carried in their genes the memory of ancestors who had stared down cave bears with nothing but sharpened sticks and had somehow lived to pass on their DNA. The tremor came again, stronger this time, and Alec's hands instinctively gripped the edges of his desk. Professor Zethkari paused mid-sentence, her compound eyes reflecting concern, but she quickly resumed her lecture about the futility of fear-based governance. That's when the emergency klaxon began its warbling cry, and the lights shifted to the ominous red of containment breach protocols. Asterisk. The klaxon's wail had barely begun when the east wall of Lecture Hall Gamma 7 exploded inward in a shower of metal fragments and superheated plasma. Through the smoking breach came something that nightmares couldn't adequately describe: a Zirithi war beast, 12 feet of engineered killing machine with obsidian carapace, razor-edged limbs, and a maw filled with rows of crystalline teeth that could shear through titanium plating. The creature's 6 red eyes swept the classroom with predatory intelligence, its head swiveling on a serpentine neck as it tasted the air with a forked tongue the size of a human arm. Designed by the extinct Zirithi Empire as the ultimate shock trooper, it was pure violence given form. Every muscle fiber and neural pathway optimized for one purpose: killing anything that moved. Chaos erupted instantly. Cyril's translucent form flickered wildly as she tried to phase shift to safety, but her panic disrupted her control. Instead of becoming incorporeal, she began rapidly cycling between dimensions, her screams echoing from multiple realities. At once, two Arion students spread their iridescent wings and launched themselves toward the ceiling vents, only to collide mid-air in their desperation, tumbling to the floor in a tangle of broken feathers and bleeding membrane. Emergency protocols activated. The rooms I announced with maddening calm as force field barriers began to shimmer into existence around the exit, strapping everyone inside with the beast. Vexstar, the proud Drakmari warrior, roared his species. Traditional battle cry, and charged the creature with claws extended, his reptilian brain overriding tactical sense. The war beast's response was swift and brutal. One massive claw swept horizontally, catching the young Drakmari across the torso and sending him crashing into the far wall where he crumpled, green blood spreading across his scaled hide. Professor Sethkari, despite her forearms and natural agility, found herself pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, her melodic voice now reduced to pained clicks and whistles as she called for help. Three Vorthix students huddled together, their crystalline skin pulsing with terrified bioelectric patterns as they tried to overload the beast's nervous system with psychic feedback. But the creature's mind was too alien, too focused, and their mental assault slid off its consciousness like water off glass dot in the midst of this pandemonium. While students with millennia of evolutionary advantages panicked and fled and fought and failed, one figure remained absolutely still. Alec Chun sat in his chair, brown eyes tracking the creature's movements with the same intensity he'd used to watch timber wolves circle his grandfather's cabin in the Montana wilderness. His heart rate was steady at 68 beats per minute. His breathing remained controlled and even. He was calculating angles, measuring distances, cataloging resources, and remembering every piece of predator behavior his grandfather had ever taught him during those long summers in the Glacier National Park backcountry. Every living thing follows patterns, boy, the old man's voice echoed in his memory. You just got to be still enough to see them. The war beast turned its terrible gaze toward the humans scattered throughout the classroom, and Alex saw something in those burning red eyes that his alien classmates had missed confusion. This creature had been bred to fight armored soldiers and bottlenecks, not young students in an academic setting. It was overwhelmed by choices, stimuli, and the chaotic energy of panicked prey. And in that moment of predatory hesitation, Alec moved. Alec's movement was nothing like the desperate flailing of his classmates or the instinct-driven charge of Vexstar. It was deliberate, economical, and absolutely silent as he slipped from his chair and began a careful circuit of the classroom's perimeter. Years of stalking elk through Rocky Mountain forests had taught him that the space between heartbeats could mean the difference between a successful hunt and going hungry, and those same principles applied when the roles were reversed. The war beast's 6 eyes tracked the largest concentration of movement, a cluster of luminar students whose panic-induced dimensional flickering created a strobe light effect that triggered the creature's predatory focus. As it oriented toward them with mechanical precision, Alec reached the professor's demonstration table and its array of chemistry equipment. Concentrated nitric acid, plasma torch, emergency beacon, he whispered to himself, cataloging each item. With the same methodical calm his grandfather had used to inventory survival supplies. His hands moved without hesitation, muscle memory taking over as he began to assemble what any civilized species would consider an improvised weapon, but what his DNA recognized as perfectly normal Tuesday afternoon tools. The beast lunged toward the luminar students, its massive claws leaving furrows in the metal flooring, and that's when Alec struck. The plasma torch, normally used for precise molecular demonstrations, became a flare gun as he ignited the nitric acid and hurled the resulting chemical fire directly into the creature's primary sensor cluster. The war beast's shriek shattered 3 windows and sent every student with enhanced hearing writhing in agony, but it also bought precious seconds. Kira, Behind the blast shield now. Alec's voice cut through the chaos with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. In life or death situations. The human girl he'd addressed, barely 16, and still traumatized from losing her colony world to raiders, moved without question, her own survival instincts responding to his calm competence. But Cyril, still cycling between dimensions her panic materialized directly in the beast's path as it thrashed blindly from the chemical burn. Alec didn't hesitate. He sprinted across open ground, scooped the Luminar girl into his arms, and dove behind an overturned desk just as razor-sharp claws whistled through the space where she'd been standing. How did you humans aren't supposed to be this fast? Cyril's form stabilized for the first time since the attack began, her translucent features wide with shock. We're not fast, Alec replied, checking her for injuries with practiced efficiency. We're efficient. There's a difference. The war beast's attention locked onto Alec with the focused intensity of a scanning array, its primitive but efficient brain recognizing something different about this small, soft creature. Unlike the others who reeked of fear pheromones and panic sweat, this human carried the scent of something far more dangerous: confidence. The creature's head tilted slightly, a gesture almost curious, as if wondering why this particular prey item wasn't running. That's right, Alec murmured, rising slowly from behind the overturned desk with his hands visible and empty. I'm the threat you should be worried about. Around the classroom, his surviving classmates watched in horrified fascination as the human deliberately drew the monster's attention. To their alien minds, shaped by millions of years of evolution that favored cooperation and technology over individual combat, Alec's behavior appeared suicidal. They couldn't understand that on Earth, sometimes the difference between predator and prey was simply a matter of perspective and preparation. The war beast took a step forward, then another, its massive claws leaving gouges in the metal flooring. Alec matched its movement, not retreating but circling, maintaining the same careful distance a wolf would keep from a wounded bear close enough to strike, far enough to avoid the counterattack. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Son, when you're facing something bigger and meaner than you, the trick isn't to fight it. The trick is to make it fight itself. Behind the creature, Kira understood. The young human girl began moving with the same silent precision Alec had taught her during their wilderness training exercises, gathering the scattered emergency beacons that had been knocked from their wall mounts. She'd grown up on a frontier colony where children learned to hunt razorbacks before they learned to read, and she recognized pack tactics when she saw them. The war beast lunged, its massive bulk moving with deceptive speed, but Alec was already gone, not faster than the creature, but anticipating its movement pattern the way a matador anticipates a bull. The beast's claws raked empty air as Alec rolled beneath its attack, coming up beside a damaged support pillar that groaned ominously under the classroom's compromised structural integrity. Cyril? He called without taking his eyes off the creature. Can you phase shift other objects or just yourself? The Luminar girl, still pressed against the blast shield where he'd left her, flickered uncertainly. Other objects, but only if I'm touching them. Why would you? Oh. Her translucent features went wide with understanding. You want me to destabilize the support structure. Only when I give the signal. Alec continued his careful dance with the war beast, leading it in a precise pattern around the classroom's perimeter. To the watching students, it looked like random evasion, but Kira recognized the strategy. He was herding the creature into position like her father used to drive cattle through canyon passes. The beast was growing frustrated, its primitive brain unable to understand why this small prey kept escaping its attacks. It reared back on its hind legs, preparing to bring its full weight down in a crushing blow that would turn everything within 6 feet into paste. And that's when Alec made his move. Now, Cyril, Kira, the beacons. The Luminar girl phase-shifted the damaged support pillar, turning solid metal momentarily incorporeal. Kira activated every emergency beacon simultaneously, their combined sonic pulse overwhelming the war beast's audio receptors at the precise moment. Its tremendous weight came crashing down on nothing but air. The creature plummeted through the destabilized flooring into the laboratory level below, its roar of confusion and rage echoing from the depths as emergency foam systems activated to contain whatever remained of the lower lab's experiments. Not in the sudden silence that followed. Alec knelt beside Professor Zethkari, checking her pulse with the same calm competence he'd shown throughout the entire encounter. Around the classroom, alien students who had been bred by evolution to be humanity's superiors in every measurable way stared at the unremarkable human who had just saved all their lives. Medical team to Lecture Hall Gamma 7, he spoke into one. Of the emergency beacons, his voice steady and professional. Multiple casualties, structure compromised, hostile contained. Only then did his hands start to shake. Part 5. The weight of unspoken truths 3 hours later. The Galactic Institute's medical bay hummed with the quiet efficiency of advanced xenobiology as healers from a dozen different species tended to the wounded. Professor Zethkari would recover fully thanks to Drakmari regeneration technology, while Vextar's pride was healing slower than his punctured lung. The Arion students were grounded for a week with wing injuries, and the Vorthik were suffering from psychic feedback headaches that would take days to subside. Alec sat in the observation lounge, watching the nebula-stained stars through the transparent aluminum viewport, while Director Yashtaya Ancient, Zilithian whose 4 arms bore the scars of the Proxima conflicts, reviewed the security footage on a holographic display. The recording showed everything: the initial breach, the panicked flight of students with capabilities far beyond human norms, and one unremarkable young man from Earth who had faced down a war beast with nothing but chemistry supplies and tactical thinking. Remarkable reflexes, the director mused, her compound eyes reflecting the hologram's glow. Your psychological profile indicates no formal military training, no genetic modifications, no enhanced reaction times. Yet you moved through that classroom, like you'd done it 1,000 times before. Maybe I have. Alec's response was quiet, his gaze still fixed on the stars. The director's secondary arms performed the Zilithian gesture of polite inquiry. The Montana wilderness zones where you grew up our xenobiological surveys indicate they're quite active. Active is one word for it. Alec finally turned from the viewport, and something in his brown eyes made the ancient warrior take a step back. My grandfather used to say that Earth didn't just evolve one apex predator. It evolved thousands, and then made them compete for the same resources. Grizzly bears, pack wolves, mountain lions, razorbacks, plague carriers, winter storms that could freeze you solid in minutes. He paused, a ghost of a smile crossing his features. And then there were the real threats. Real threats? The things that came through the dimensional rifts when the Yellowstone supervolcano destabilized the local space-time matrix in 2387. We called them shadows, creatures that weren't quite from our reality, but weren't from anywhere else either. The government covered it up, said it was just unusual seismic activity, but those of us living in the wilderness zones knew better. Director Yashtai's 4 arms went very still. The Proxima conflicts of 2387, the same year she'd shown the class earlier, had involved dimensional warfare, unstable FTL drives creating tears in reality, and creatures that defied conventional physics. If Earth had been affected by similar phenomena, ... how many? She asked quietly. Shadows? Maybe 300 confirmed kills over 6 years. But they weren't the worst thing out there. Alec stood, moving to the medical bay's viewport, where he could see his classmates recovering from their injuries. The worst thing was learning that sometimes the monsters looked exactly like people. Cyril materialized beside them, her translucent form still flickering with residual trauma. "I wanted to thank you," she began, then stopped as she saw his expression. "Alec, what's wrong?" He was staring at something on the security feed that the director had missed a timestamp showing the war beast's initial breach. "Director, what? Time did the containment failure occur?" 0847 hours, ship time. Why? I felt the floor vibration at 0832. The atmospheric recyclers changed frequency at 835. The metallic contamination in the air started at 0838. Alec's voice carried the flat tone of someone stating facts rather than opinions. That wasn't a malfunction. Someone opened that containment cell manually, then waited 9 minutes before triggering the breach alarm. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire as the implications sank in. Somewhere on the Institute's staff was someone who had deliberately unleashed a war beast in a classroom full of students, someone who had wanted to see how the different species would react under ultimate pressure, or someone who had wanted to see what the human would do. "There's going to be another test, isn't there?" Alec asked, though he already knew the answer. This wasn't about training future diplomats. This was about finding out what humans are really capable of when everything goes wrong. Director Yash Tai's compound eyes reflected something that might have been respect, or possibly fear. "The galaxy is changing, young human. Old alliances are fracturing. New threats are emerging from the void between stars, and the Confederation needs leaders who can function when civilized solutions fail." She gestured toward the viewport, where alien rescue ships moved like fireflies against the cosmic dark. "Your classmates are brilliant, gifted, and utterly unprepared for the kind of war that's coming. But humans are. Humans," she said quietly, "are the only species in known space that evolved to fight monsters in the dark." Alec nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning. The Galactic Institute of Unified Species wasn't trying to teach humans to be like other species. It was trying to teach other species to be more like humans.